We take one more round of questions, please. It's a quick one.
Hi, I'm from America, United States of America. And one issue I realized over the years is how so many people, the talent of Southeast Asia is immigrating to Canada and the United States. Is it possible you can reverse this trend and get the talent to return back if there's some stability and transparency in your governmental system? That's all.
I'm Mr. Teo, City Councillor from Seberang Perai. Your Excellency, you were the Prime Minister for more than 3 years in Thailand. And what were the steps that you have taken to combat corruption in your very own country?
Good evening, Your Excellency. I'm Howard from just down the road in Perak, here to represent a think tank from that part of the world. Fuad earlier on mentioned Europe and the Eurozone breaking apart at the seams, being a regionalized area, being a common, currency and all that palaver. Yes, it's falling apart at the seams, and no one really likes the sight of what's unfolding in front of us right now. And we also hear the words community being bandied around here, and I think that's something that we need to encourage, the ASEAN community, and we're here essentially for the ASEAN Coalition for Clean Governance, and the word clean governance has been used quite a lot as well. And essentially my question is, in the corporate sector, in the private sector, and more often now in governments or governing agencies, vision, missions, and beliefs are being used as the cornerstones of those organizations and institutions. What are your opinions on what the vision, mission, and beliefs of the ASEAN community will be in the 10-year vision that you mentioned earlier on? What the vision, mission, beliefs of the ASEAN community will be when it becomes reality? Thank you.
Your Excellency, my name is Yen from Penang. I would like to ask you a question on how do you, within your party, if party members speak out against your party, how do you deal with them? Thank you.
Okay, please, one more, last question.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Ivo, and I'm from the European Union. But this is not to seek vengeance over the currency common. Just one point I would like to ask for, well, it has been considered on the highest ASEAN level, because one little difference between the European Union and ASEAN currently, apart from the currency, is the legal order. If the European Union has managed to become what it has become, it is because since the beginning it has this institution which is called the European Court of Justice, which means that after leaders meet and they sign and they agree a lot of things and they come home and they see how difficult it is to implement, there's somebody to remind them, you have to be accountable to what you signed. So it takes much more than meeting and making commitments. Actually, if there is no court which obliges countries to harmonize, my question is whether the ASEAN has considered to have this distinct legal order and Court of Justice. Thank you.
Okay, I'll take the two questions that are connected with the European integration first. Let me first of all say this. I know that we think that Europe is still in crisis and very much troubled by the currency issue. But it does illustrate, what's going on now does illustrate one point. When I said earlier that the success of ASEAN would depend on us making our people feel they belong to some kind of community, I think you should also look at the European problem from a different angle. We should actually be surprised that there is determination to keep things together in Europe. Whether you're a German taxpayer, you're a French bank, you're a Greek citizen, and so on. And I think that is actually a testimony to the success of the community building process in the past in Europe, where people felt that they belong, not just because they have the institutions that you mentioned, but they are determined to keep it together. Just imagine that if we had some kind of crisis, similar crisis hitting ASEAN, and we have to question or ask our own people whether they want to keep ASEAN together or somehow get out and find an easy solution, I think it would be very difficult to see the kind of determination to keep ASEAN together the way we have seen happening in the European situation. Even the Greek voters in the second round of voting have to think twice about even trying to change the austerity plans, that they somehow have to make compromises in order to keep things together. Now, why has there been difficulties in Europe, and also perhaps not as much progress from the ASEAN side in terms of institution building at the regional level? And my analysis has always been this. What we did in ASEAN was to try to, first of all, get all 10 Southeast Asian nations into ASEAN first, which is why it was very difficult to deepen any kind of regional agreements. We couldn't be ambitious because there is this development gap, because we have so many different political and economic systems in the member nations. So we brought the 10 together, and then we begin to do the deepening of cooperation. We have the new charter, and who knows, we will slowly build towards the kind of institutions that Europe has, hopefully without the same level of bureaucracy and regulations. But what happened in Europe was the integration was very advanced. And then you brought in new members. And then you find that it's quite difficult to reconcile the differences or the gap that exists between the newer members with the existing members to try to reach the same, frankly, very high standards, which is why it's putting pressure on the kind of issue like currency when you have still fiscal sovereignty within each nation. So I think we're coming from different angles and therefore have different challenges at different stages of the integration program. So the gentleman at the back asked, well, what are we in ASEAN aiming for? Well, in the end, I think our common aim, when we work for our people, is that we hope that our people have the highest quality of lives. And to do that, there has to be balanced, sustained, inclusive economic growth. And to achieve that, as I said before, we need to build and have the kind of environment and institutions that would support that. Democratization, more rights for the people, and of course, instilling values and perhaps cultures that will also support these institutions. That's what ASEAN's aim should be, which is why I never wanted to put emphasis on a particular dimension of our cooperation, not even the economic integration. But I said that we need also to make sure that the political and the social changes that are necessary for cooperation and integration must also take place in parallel. So for instance, we talked about setting up the Human Rights Commission at the ASEAN level, at first in terms of promotion, but soon it will have to be about protection. And ASEAN's progress in recent years very much linked to what happens in countries like Myanmar. And therefore, there's a political dimension, rights dimension, environmental dimension, as well as the economic dimension. And we have to make sure that we actually take care of all these various aspects of integration. People who speak out against their own party? Did I get that right? I'm from the Democrat Party. If people don't never speak out against their own party, they're not Democrats. So we're quite used to it, and we have our way of dealing with it. I think basically the best thing, of course, is to try to prevent it by having them speak out against you in your own internal meetings. So rather than let them vent their frustration or voice their disagreement publicly, you have to make sure that within the party structure, you have to be as inclusive as possible, be as democratic as possible, so that they have a way of channeling their disagreements and voices in some kind of internal process, and you make your explanation why the majority of the party might disagree with that particular member. Reversing the trend of losing our talents to a country like the United States. People often focus on financial incentives. My own take on this is somewhat different. I think I know a lot of very good, talented, intelligent people who'd love to work in their homelands, but find that the systems or the governance in their homelands just simply cannot cater for what they want to do for the country. They get frustrated, they get discouraged by corruption, by over-regulation, and so on. And I believe that as our countries in this region see this and put in good governance systems, maybe the financial rewards that are different would not be enough to actually lure these people away from their homelands. So I think, I know that the financial rewards problem has to be addressed too, but I think what's often ignored is that a lot of these people don't really want to go, but find that their talents are wasted in bad governance when they stay at home. And that's something that we need to address. Have I got all that? Oh, one more. What we did to combat corruption. I'll give you an example because I talked about policy design. In Thailand, we had a disastrous pledge scheme for agricultural products, rice, tapioca, maize, and so on, where the government basically, in the end, buys rice from farmers at sometimes even almost double the market price. Huge stockpiles, and then they find that the maintenance of the stocks and also finally the way to get rid of the stocks will be ridden with all kinds of corruption. We changed that policy. We continue to give to farmers, but we don't buy their products. What we do is we calculate the price that we want them to get, and then look at the market price and basically give them the cash difference as a kind of income support. That way, the government doesn't get involved in trade, doesn't distort the market, doesn't ruin the competitiveness of our exports. And the burden of that policy is transparent because you have to actually put in the budget how many households you are helping, by how many bahts or dollars or ringgit and so on. This is what we did. That's the kind of thing that I think is not directly an anti-corruption policy as such, but having the issue of what I said earlier about some policies are more anti-corruption friendly than others. Unfortunately, of course, after the change of government, the current government has gone back to the pledge scheme, but only last week, the National Counter-Corruption Commission actually submitted the report to the government that it is making the observation that the pledge scheme basically leads to too much corruption, and that there are alternative means of achieving the same objective, which is to help farmers get a good price or a good income without falling into this trap of allowing corruption to take place. That's the kind of thing we did. Basically invitation to the private sector to get themselves involved in the corruption fight. And I think we can also do that at the regional and at international levels as well. At the World Economic Forum, they have an alliance of private companies that sign up to some kind of agreement that they will never pay bribes in their own countries, in other countries, and if in order to get business in other countries they have to pay bribes, they would not go into that country. If you have this kind of alliance, if you create this kind of values among the private sector, then they will truly be joining you in the fight against corruption.